Overtired. So tired. Overtired.
You're listening to Overtired. I'm Christina Warren, and I am joined, as always, by Jeff Severance-Gunsel and Brett Terpstra. Guys, how are you?
Hello. Episode 295.
I got new teeth. Nope. Okay, so our listeners, we're not doing video.
What just
but
happened?
for the last year, I had the 4 teeth in the bottom right back of my mouth got pulled. So I haven't been able to chew on the right side of my mouth for a year now. And I just got used to it. I got used to having all that extra space for my tongue. And your brain just accommodates, you just start chewing with one side of your mouth. So now I have to force myself to chew, but they put these teeth in. I got this bridge, this implant. And for people listening, I just pulled my cheek back and tried.
No, you did the old comedy, fish hook in the cheek.
Yep.
Yeah, you really did.
And the teeth they put in, this implant they put in is bigger than the teeth that were taken out. I don't know if you can see, but it comes in almost a 1/4 inch further.
Yeah, okay.
Than the normal teeth would.
Oh, geez.
Ooh, weird. So, okay, now, was that an accident, or is that just how they work, or
I complained about it, and they explained to me that because there's 2, screw posts, whatever they're called, implants, I guess.
Right.
And the way that they have to create a bridge that spans across these 2 posts, it has to be in a straight line instead of curved the way a set of teeth normally would be. So I guess it's unavoidable. I'm going to give it a couple weeks. And if I can't stop biting my tongue, I'm having to retrain the way I speak. I tend to lisp now if I'm not paying close attention because my tongue is kind of jammed in towards the center of my mouth. And it's nice to be able to chew on the right side of my mouth. But honestly, I kind of miss not having teeth there at this point. I'm getting, as the days go by, I've only had them for 2 days. So I feel like I'm getting more used to them every day. We'll see. Maybe my brain will just adjust to this new reality now.
I think it probably eventually will. They might have to do a thing where they shave some of that down or whatever. I don't know.
If that's an option, I'm all for it.
I mean, they might be able to. The reason I'm saying this is I know that they can shave regular teeth down, so I don't understand why they couldn't shave an implant or something.
Yeah.
We'll
see. What?
I went to the dentist for a crown, and they gave me a 3D print of my teeth.
Oh, jeez. What are you going to do with them? Halloween's coming up.
That is cool.
Well, my fucking family's sick of seeing them. I had it on my bedside table for a while.
Oh,
my
yeah.
family's my family's like that with the gallstones I got taken out.
Your wife is you put that in the house first. You get that off the bedside table.
It's fascinating to look at. You never see it's for this visual episode of Overtired. I have a full 3D printed version of my mouth, and I can just look at it, and it's looking at me, or at least part of me, and it's where I know there's bigger gaps in my teeth, I can locate them on the side, and it's just amazing.
Do you look at it while you're flossing so you can
Well, no, but it's actually facing me. I'm looking at it. It's up on top of my monitor on a little tray. So they're staring at me all the time.
So one of the benefits I was looking forward to with this whole 1/4 of my mouth being fake now was that I can't get cavities there. What I didn't realize is with a bridge like this, you have to floss underneath it. So it's not that I have a 1/4 of my mouth being maintenance free. It's that I have a 1/4 of my mouth that requires different maintenance than the rest of my mouth, which I'm pretty disappointed about.
Yeah. What is that? You bring the floss back to the back and you go under the teeth?
So there's 2 posts in it, so you can't just scoop under it. You get this thing I think it's called a bridge thread.
Okay.
And it's it's just a wire, and you have to get it between and around the posts and poke through at the bottom of your teeth. Wow. Instead of going between the teeth, because it's one solid piece. So you can't just floss down into it. You have to dig underneath it. And I'm not excited about that.
Yeah.
A elderly British friend of mine told me that it used to be custom on the island for a wedding gift in rural parts of the country to give the husband and the wife to give them fake teeth for their wedding present. A full set of dentures.
Like planning for the future?
I guess so. I don't understand it. I didn't fact check it. This lady's generally very reliable, but
everyone should have at least one elderly British friend.
I agree.
This is the best.
Everyone should have at least 2 Austrian mates. Sorry, that's a reference to a movie that neither of you will ever see, but It's All Gone Pete Tong is a fucking classic, and everyone should watch it at least once.
Okay.
All right.
I'm adding, it's been in here before, but I'm adding Pete Tong to our show notes right now.
Okay, he is. Can you hear him clicking? He's not bullshit.
All Gone Pete Tong. Such a good movie.
Spelled like it sounds.
It's a great movie, I'm telling you. His girlfriend tells him he should maybe write a book about his life, and he says, "Oh, yeah, that's brilliant. Wait, that's a lot. Maybe a pamphlet or a brochure." I get that. I feel you. All right, should we do some mental health?
Yeah, I guess so.
I feel like we segued into that already.
I definitely think we segued into it.
Who's up first?
I'll go first.
Awesome.
Because mine is not massive. So I mentioned this ironically in an ad read last week that I've been like having some indigestion, and I think I have an ulcer is basically what I think it is. And so this isn't really mental health per se, but it is like my health, which affects my mental health.
Absolutely.
So like the last few weeks, this has been a weird thing where I've never really had this, where I have like really bad, like all day, like indigestion. So how it started was I'd been at a friend's house. I hadn't had much to eat that day. I ate some stuff. I had some wine, and then I woke up like 8 hours later and I threw up. But I didn't throw up, because I was like drunk or anything. Like it was like that thing where sometimes, I don't know if either of you ever had this, but sometimes you do get like indigestion where like all of a sudden you wake up and like your mouth is full of saliva and you're like, I have to throw up because there's gas or something in my stomach. And that happened, but then it continued to happen for like 3 more days. And I really couldn't eat anything. I couldn't keep anything down. I just felt terrible. And I felt like, it was like lower than normal indigestion, but not like a stomach ache. And it's continued, and it got better, but now it's like worse. Like I've had a lot of Tums. I've been taking like over the counter things and whatnot. But, and things were better. I had one instance at my parents' house for one day, but, then it, was better after I was taking some some Pepsid or something. But I ran out of Pepsid, so I have to get more Pepsid, and it's like back, and it is not great. Like I've forgotten, like it's been a while since I've had any sort of like physical health problem. Almost all my problems have been like hidden. So, like mental, and so I'm like, God damn, this sucks. So I'm gonna have to find a gastro to go to and like get checked out. But it's one of those things that can make you tired and like make you not feel good. Like otherwise, when like your body like feels like it's like
right
collapsing
and I think
itself.
I think that's under recognized is that chronic pain of any kind, even short term, has a major effect on, because it affects your sleep, it affects your diet, it affects your overall pain level,
right?
Which all affects your mental health, and that absolutely is a valid part of the mental health corner. Any kind people who are like deal with like extensive chronic pain or chronic fatigue, that takes a real toll on the mental health.
Yeah, no, and it doesn't, like, and obviously mine is very minor compared to those things, but but I think that's a great point, Brett, and that I think was what it kind of got me thinking about, which is that a lot of times I do think sometimes like if your other health is not good, then that's going to make everything else better or worse. And I think on the flip side, right, like they're these terrible like fulfilling things, is that if you have like your mental health is not good, then you're less likely to take care of your physical health. And like it's this terrible, like self-perpetuating motion machine.
Yeah. And maybe even vice versa.
Yeah, exactly. So that's me.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had an additional thought for this and I lost it. I lost it because I was working really hard to actively pay attention to what you were saying, which is a problem I have. Like, I will start thinking about my response, and the person I'm talking to will continue on with their story. But meanwhile, I got stuck on this part I wanted to respond to, and I missed it. And when I edit our podcasts, I always realize that I've done that. Like, you've gone on and shared something important, relevant, noteworthy. But I got stuck on something you said like 2 minutes earlier, and that's what I respond to, and I like derail the conversation, and it drives me nuts to hear like my own habits when I'm editing this show. So I apologize for all the times I've done that, and probably will do it in the future.
Hey, that's okay. I mean, I actually for one, like, appreciate the self-awareness there, because I think most of us probably do that. I think that's one of those truisms. Again, last week I quoted something from Invisible Monsters, one of my favorite books, which has not aged particularly well in certain aspects, but I still love it. Where, like, you know, the postcards they send out, which are again these sort of trite things, but some of them are good. Like one of my favorite quotes. But there's one where it's like, people, you know, ask you how your day is so that they can tell you about theirs. And there is a certain truth to that, I think, where a lot of times we're thinking about our responses and our own things, or waiting to say our next thing, and not always like active listening. This is my long-winded way of saying that, yes, active listening can be difficult, but it's especially difficult when you're trying to think about what you said next. Did you remember what you were going to say?
No, but I saw an Instagram meme the other day that basically, to paraphrase, the conversation between two neurodivergent people is basically just a series of, that reminds me of the time where none of it relates to the story the person just told.
Right.
It's just like a constant, like, well, that reminds me of. And I'm like, yeah, that's how I actually prefer to converse. I feel like there's a lot communicated when you share personal stories. And some people they look at that as like, oh, you're making it all about you. But actually, that's how I relate to what you're saying.
Right.
I find a connection that I can latch onto. And if my connection offends you or it's wrong, then I want to hear why your experience is different. Like, I put it out there for the purpose of like trying to communicate. It's my way of saying, is this what you mean? And some people don't deal with that. Some people, like Elle, my girlfriend, have learned to communicate with me in that way, to hear it the way that I mean it. But yeah, when you're talking to a neurotypical, that can sometimes not go so well.
Yeah, although I think that most neurotypical people are like that too. I mean, I don't know. I mean, like, I'm at this point now, I don't know if anybody is neurotypical, to be completely honest.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if I even believe in that particular monster.
Yeah, because I think that most people are that way. And I think that what you just described, if anything, I would actually describe that as a fairly common response, to say that you relate to people by being able to, you know, make comparisons in your own experiences.
I don't know if that's true. I can't prove it either way. All I know is what's true for me, and it's true for me. So
I think that's true for me largely. I mean, it's not universally true, but like, I think that a lot of times, like, one of my first instincts, especially when talking to people, is to try to find a thing I can relate to, if only not so much for myself, but oftentimes for them, to be like, oh, you know, I know what you're saying. I have empathy or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like, whereas I would think that I think that. So again, like, I think terms like neurotypical and neuroatypical are not necessarily even helpful at this point. But I do wonder, like, if you were going to go on that spectrum, I think that if people who have a hard time with empathy, that might not be a thing they might even be aware of, if that makes any sense, where they could even make that connection of, this is similar to this thing with me.
So maybe, and maybe your life is similar to mine in that you have attracted and curated people in your life who can relate to you in those ways. There is a world out there that was designed by neurotypicals. That is why those of us who are neurodivergent often have trouble. I mean, it's what makes school hard for us. It's what makes work hard for us. We have extra challenges because this neurotypical world was not designed for us.
Sure.
And this is especially true with like autism, but ADHD for sure. Those people do exist though. They really do.
I know they do.
But we self-select out of those groups.
Well, no, and I know they exist. I'm not trying to say that. What I'm saying is my experiences, and this is why I guess I am neurodivergent, but I've never identified that way, because for most of my life, and even now, like I've existed in primarily neurotypical spaces where I've worked with a lot of neurodivergent people, obviously, but I've also been in very neurotypical spaces that are very common and like excelled in those spaces, right? Like,
I think you're good at masking.
Well, not just masking, but I think I'm actually good, to be completely honest. I think I'm good at understanding social cues and social scenarios, regardless of what person I'm with. I don't think that's masking. I think that's like, if anything, like I just understand instantly what the social dynamic of something is.
You info dump though.
Yeah.
Which is not a neurotypical thing. That is an atypical thing to you know something about something. And in your case, like, you know so much about so many things. Like, someone hits a topic you know about and you will dump. You will info dump, and it can make neurotypical people uncomfortable. It can make ADHD people like me lose focus.
No, totally. No. And I'm again, like, I'm not claiming that I'm like not normal. What I'm saying is like,
and I'm not claiming to give you therapy.
Well, I'm just saying, like, in these situations, like, I think what you were describing is trying to find like similarities. I actually think that's a fairly common neurotypical skill, to try to find commonalities.
So there's this line. We won't drive this into the ground, but
sure,
there's a difference. Like, for me, someone will tell me a meaningful story, and instead of me, I believe the neurotypical response would just be to say, I hear you. That's really rough, or that's really meaningful in its way. And my response instead is to say, yeah, one time when I was, 25, this happened to me. And it's not just in a pure conversational, as a gambit, it doesn't really indicate necessarily understanding, especially if what I say isn't obviously correlated. I found people like Jeff here, they hear me do that and he rolls with it. Like, I think he understands. I think he speaks the way I do. But people like my mother will worry that I'm making the conversation about me when they just told me something that was meaningful to them. And my way of acknowledging that it was meaningful was to find a personal story that relates. But for my mom, and if anyone's neurotypical, it's my mother. And that's why, like, life has been rough, because she does not understand like what I go through. And she sees it as me making it about me.
Yeah. Okay. I can understand. I can actually see both of those things. And I guess, this would be the difference. I think that, I guess, I think that most people do actually act like you, even people like your mother, where they would in their mind find a similar situation. They might not share it at that moment because that might not be the right response, if that makes sense.
Yes. I appreciate that you think you know how neurotypical people
well,
you think of yourself as neurotypical.
I mean, I'm not neurotypical, but I've been around enough neurotypical people, and I do feel like I understand how neurotypical people act, because that's been my primary existence. Like, my family is completely neurotypical. So I know
I constantly butt up against it. Yeah.
And I don't, like, I know I'm neurodivergent, but I understand this is what I'm trying to say. Like, I understand the social scenario where if you say what you're feeling, how they're going to react. And why they would react that way. I also completely understand why they would react that way.
And to be fair, like, I can get along fine at a party these days. Less so when I was younger, but yeah, I've gotten really good at existing in a more neurotypical space. I'm not like handicapped. It's not like everything I do comes across as like disabled in any way. Like, I can be social. I can be well liked. I can even have deep conversations with people that aren't like me. So I'm not saying it's not possible, It's just there are differences in the way we naturally communicate.
Yeah, I guess all I was going to say, and this will be my final thing, and we've gone way too long on this, and you can edit out any or most of this.
Nope,
this
it all
boring.
stays.
Is I think that most people, this is what I was going to say, maybe not for the reasons that you do, but I think that most people do, because this is a truism, and this is like a known like truism or aphorism, right? This is one of those things which is that usually the whole time someone else is talking, people are waiting and thinking about what they want to say rather than listening to the next thing to say. Like that is a truism, and that is a neurotypical truism. So that's all I was going to say, is that many people, I think, are thinking about their own experiences or their own relation thing while someone else is talking. They might not share that the way you did, but most people aren't actively listening.
And this will be the last thing I say on the topic, because it's gone on. But that is probably one of those things that everyone can relate to. Everybody like has that. For ADHD people in particular, it's hard to circumvent that. It's hard to bring yourself back.
Right.
I think it's harder for ADHD people to like see that that's happening and do something about it. Anyway, Jeff, how's your mental health?
Well, it's interesting because my mental health is what it is, but I've really been thinking a lot about the quality of presence, and thinking about that again as you're talking. For me, quality of presence in the sense of like, I've done a lot of it over recent years, COVID excluded. I've done some experimenting with myself in social situations where I actually, work to not do the thing that you're describing, which is like, oh, that makes me think of a story. Cause I actually quite love like story trading. And I think that in certain relationships I have, that's a norm, and it's just lovely. And I've found in many, many other situations that I think I'm hitting the mark, and I've probably missed it. And in missing it, my quality of presence has degraded significantly in that conversation. Mm-hmm. And so I've experimented with kind of letting stories just end without me having something to share about it, but in finding some meaningful and natural way to sort of mirror or just register that I've taken this in, and whatever sort of appropriate level of indicating, I feel that the gravity of this or the hilarity of this or whatever it is. I actually, for me, the reason that's difficult is because I am like, it's like in my DNA on my dad's side, like I get antsy in silences. Mm-hmm. My dad and my grandmother, his mother, always did and always does make sounds in silence, whistle or or my grandma used to always go, oh, golly. Like in any fucking silence, right? Including in really serious conversations when the silence felt meaningful, right? Like generative. And so I learned this incredible lesson when I was working with my reporting partner, Samara Freemark, for American Public Media on a project. And we were interviewing a bunch of veterans, and she was holding the shotgun mic because she could actually hold it without moving her fingers constantly and causing the audio to be completely terrible. And I was doing a lot of the question asking in the beginning of our project. And after like one interview, she's like, Gunsel, you do not leave any silence. Like you have to learn to just pause and see what happens. I'm like, okay, I'm in. Well, what do we do? And she's like, I'm holding the microphone, which is always like very close to the source, right? She's like, after you ask a question or after an answer seems like it's done, I'm going to raise my finger. And until my finger goes back down, you're not going to say anything. I'm like, got it. Right. Like, awesome. And it was incredible. Like what I learned about gathering stories and what can happen when you actually, this is like classic, like would you believe I'm a cis white male? That when you actually leave space, what can happen, even though it's initially awkward, is actually like transformative and magical, and actually does leave room for that person who just finished a story to go somewhere entirely different. And that applies to conversations. And so I've really tried, and I'm not always good at it, but I really try to just leave space after someone tells me something, even though it triggers, and I really want to tell them this fucking story because it's such a good story, and they'll know a little bit more about me and like, you know, whatever else. Like, I'm really practicing that kind of quality of presence. So anyway, I was already going to talk about quality of presence, but what you both were talking about really raised that for me. And so I'm answering the question, how is my mental health, by just saying that like I am thinking a lot about quality of presence and the ways in which my quality of presence can be degraded, the ways in which I may feel it's good and it's actually not good. There's this really funny story from when my wife was pregnant with our first son, and we were living in New York, and we went to we were part of a group, like a group of people that were about to have babies, right? It was like a parenting fucking club or whatever. And we were learning different lessons about, you know, the actual birthing process. And they did this thing where it was all men and women. It was all like straight couples, where the women were supposed to kind of just sit in a chair, and the men were supposed to come behind them and put their hand on their back, and just the instructions were just to be like as loving and supportive as you can, like send all that loving and supportive energy through your hand into their back. And we did the exercise, and when it was done, it was time for the women in the group to share out, and one after another, they're like, felt really oppressive. And so we're all going like, support, love, light, babies, you know, and they're just like, fuck, get this hand off of me. And that taught me a lot, and I continue learning about quality of presence. So that's my answer.
I will say it was really hard for me to not interrupt you while you were talking, to talk about how common it is for ADHD people to interrupt in a conversation. And I'm like, I would just be illustrating the point. In my conversation with Christina before you went, Jeff, like I interrupted her so many times because I couldn't like not say what was on my mind. And I feel like shit about that. And honestly, it is easier for me to interrupt women than it is men. And that sucks. Like it's like I naturally,
that is shitty.
No,
honestly, that's really fucked up.
It really is. And I've noticed this about myself. Like if I have something I think is important to say, I'm willing to cut a woman off where I will give a guy a little more time to finish his speech. And like, at least that's what it seems to me in anecdotal situations. Like, and it's something that I work on. But it is a common trait for ADHD people to interrupt. And that is something that I could really use someone holding up their finger and just that signal would be like, okay, all right, back down. We're just going to keep listening. Maybe what I have to say right now might not even be relevant by the time they finish talking, and that's okay. Like I need to learn to deal with that.
Well, and in the case of what you're describing of interrupting women more than men, like to have a bigger finger, that is up for longer. In those cases, I mean, that is something I think it's really important. You've got that self-awareness, and I think you just figure out like it's just what you do on your computer, right? Like what's the hack? What can I do to make sure that, and I have no shame in having to like mechanize me shutting the fuck up. Like, you know, the idea of that finger or whatever else, like, because what happens is it quickly feels like something other than mechanized. It just feels like spaciousness, you know, and, you know, that's the biggest thing in the world, right?
I feel physically bad now about admitting that I cut women off in conversation. I'm going to leave it in the podcast because it's fucking true. Like it's true, but I feel physically bad now.
I'm sorry you feel physically bad, but I'm glad that you admitted that, right? Like I think that's because honestly, like it's one of those things, like I think that it's a good thing to kind of like be aware of, right? Like I think you know, like I'm glad that you have that self-awareness to at least even say that. Like I think that's really good.
How am I ever going to fix it if I don't acknowledge it?
Well, that's exactly it. And which I think goes to what Jeff was saying, which is like, I think, and I've done something similar, Jeff, where I've also like tried to be more present. So I really appreciate what you were saying about that, because that encourages me to continue to do that, because I think that silences can be beautiful, but like you, I also kind of have a hard time like letting things be that way. But I think what Jeff was saying, and this is maybe me completely undoing what I was just proclaiming to do, is I think applicable to even like what you were saying, Brett, about like you notice that you are more open to interrupting women. If you're aware of these things and if you can be conscious of it, even if it's hard and even if it takes time, even if you don't have that physical cue of the hand going up, you can make changes in your behavior, right? And then those changes, the more you do them, the more common, like the easier it is to continue to do them, and the more they become habits. So, just like, yes, it's harder for ADHD people, but that doesn't mean it's impossible, and it doesn't mean that like you know what I mean, like our mental challenges are not like crutches. They're not excuses for us to act certain ways. They're just not. So if that's something you really want to change, you can take the steps, which starts with acknowledging what happens, to recognize it, and then think about it, not feel actively bad, but to be like, okay, well, in the future, I'm going to be aware of this and stop myself when I even if I sense it's happening, stop myself when I start to do it, so that the habit becomes something that you just do.
Sure. Yeah. And I've been aware of this for a little while now. I feel physically bad having publicly admitted it to thousands of people. That's fair. I'll be very aware of it now. So guess what? After months of talking about how I needed to find a therapist, I found a therapist.
Woo!
I had my first session a couple days ago. We did a meet and greet, just kind of like an interview. Is this guy going to work for me? And I wasn't sure. Like, he checked all the boxes, all the questions I had lined up. He had answers that were satisfactory, but at the end of a little like 20-minute, let's just chat kind of thing, I didn't feel like he was smarter than me. And I really want someone smarter than me that can call me on bullshit. 'Cause I'm a smart guy. I'm also an addict. I'm very adept at deception and manipulation for sure. And like, I need someone smart enough to just be like, nope, that's not right. That's not true. What do you actually think about this? What are you actually feeling? What actually happened in that situation? And I wasn't sure he could be that guy for me. And I didn't know if I wanted a male or a female therapist. So I put unspecified when I did the Psychology Today search. But this guy came up and he has experience with religious trauma. He has experience with addiction. He has experience with bipolar and ADHD. And during our first session, he explained things about my bipolar specifically. Like, he listened to me explain what my like manic episodes were like and everything. And he was able to tell me things about my condition that I didn't know before, and that I double checked to verify, and he knows what he's talking about. It was impressive.
Awesome.
He's worked with alcohol abuse and addicts, and at like dual diagnosis clinic in Minnesota, and he's worked with 7-Day Adventists and some cult members that needed deconversion. And yeah, so like he immediately, when I talked about my fundamentalist upbringing, and he, without prompting, was like, that's abuse. You were abused. And I'm like, I needed to hear that from him. I needed a therapist who understood that while outwardly appearing like a Leave It to Beaver Cleaver home,
it was not.
My upbringing was terrifying. Yeah. And I wasn't physically abused in any way. I wasn't sexually abused, but I was emotionally abused, and it affects me to this day. And I feel like this guy, I feel like he hit all the right buttons I'm no longer concerned about his intelligence level. He's a smart enough guy. He's at least as smart as I am. Maybe not smarter, but he's smart enough, and I feel like this is going to work. So I signed up to do weekly sessions for the next 6 weeks, and we'll see how things go. It'll be the first time I've actually given therapy a chance.
That's fantastic.
I'm so glad to hear that. And I'm so glad like you gave him a second chance and that you didn't just go on that kind of like initial gut feeling of, he's not smart enough.
Right. Well, I realized like I could probably shoot down therapists for the rest of time.
Yeah, I was going to say you're probably not going to find a therapist who's smarter than you, to be completely honest.
Well, and the thing is, like, that's a very subjective.
It is.
Like, no one's sharing their IQ scores with me, and I don't even know how much faith I put in the idea of an IQ test. Like, what he met all the requirements on paper that I could think of, that I could possibly come up with, and this idea of like, is he smarter than me? It's subjective, and I could use that to shoot down anybody. So I had to ignore that one and just accept that he met all the other requirements and give him a shot. And yeah, I think it's going to work out.
For me, it's not smart. I mean, like generally speaking, it's important that somebody be smart and, a little wise even, right? Mm-hmm. Or wizened, but clear-eyed is actually what matters the most. Is like the thing that you said where he was able to sort of reflect back at you what you already knew, but you needed to hear, which is that your religious upbringing was traumatic, right? Mm-hmm. Clear-eyed enough to be able to kind of see you in these ways that you're presenting yourself as you get to know each other. It takes smarts for sure, but I think you can have the smartest therapist in the world and they might not see you,
Our first session was telehealth. I will be meeting with him in person for our second session, just so I can get a feel for like the difference between a video session and an office session. But at the beginning of the telehealth appointment, he like stretched back, put his fingers behind his head and like raised his arms up. And like, it was clearly to display that he had half sleeves on both arms, tattoos. And it felt like, I'm like, that is a weird flex for your first session with somebody to be like, yeah, look at me. I'm a young tattooed guy. Give me your faith and trust. And, that threw me a little bit, but, I didn't ask him about his ink. I feel like he probably would have had a lot to say about the meaningfulness. Like, apparently he grew up on a reservation.
Okay.
In like North Dakota, but he's very white. I don't know the story there. I didn't ask. Maybe we'll get into that at some point.
I mean, maybe he's not as white as you think. Like maybe he is like, you know what I mean? Like, cause
maybe he's one of those people who actually is 1/16 Native
That's what I'm saying. Like you never, or maybe even more than that. You don't know. Like people, like race is a weird thing in terms of how much like it, people look certain ways. Yeah.
I was told as a kid I was 1/16 Native American.
We were all told that, Brett. We were all told that.
I feel like that's, and I began to realize that everyone around me thought that as well, and everyone was getting their DNA results back.
I was going to say, and we all realized it was a lie. We all had that one great uncle who was Native American. Yeah, like we all had that, like Cherokee or something. We all had that.
Exactly. In my memory, I met my great grandmother who was Sioux, or like Missouri Sioux, and I remembered that. I'm like, yep, I'm definitely 1/16 because the math works out. Now, I'm not even sure that memory is real. Her name was Hahu, but that might have just been like a white trash nickname she had. I don't even know. I'm scared to ask, but I've stopped telling anyone that I have any Native American in my blood.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think the Elizabeth Warren thing should have all been like signed to all of us. You know what I mean? Because I think that was the perfect encapsulation of like, that's what happens when you believe that. And then you go to school.
Oh, that was brutal.
And it was. And then you get the stuff back. And like, because I don't think that she was like intentionally trying to like fuck over the system. Like, I really do think that she thought that she had that stuff and that she could claim those things. And it's like, no. But
yeah.
All right, so we have a couple of subtopics in our mental health corner.
We do.
First, I was going to mention, like, I haven't been manic for the last week, but I have gotten shitty sleep. I've been waking up between 12 and 3 every morning, and like a line from a song will be looping in my head. I won't be worrying. I won't be stressed, but like my brain will just be latched onto a line. Like I've had K Flay's new album running through my head like nonstop, and like just one or two lines. Sometimes an entire verse will just get looped in my brain. And I wouldn't call them racing thoughts. I would just call it my brain won't stop latching onto this thing and fall asleep. And I end up tossing and turning until like 6 a.m. when I finally get up. So I'm not like up all night coding like I would be if I were manic. Yeah. I'm not sleeping well.
Sorry. Sucks.
Also, K Flay's new album is fucking great.
That is
Inside Voices, Outside Voices. If anybody cares, check it out.
I'm scared of the internet was the song that delighted me.
Yeah, I haven't listened to it in depth. I'm still listening to a lot of Beyonce, but I did like give it one kind of go through, and I really liked it. So, and because of you and because of this pod, I'm a K-Flay fan.
So TGIF is a song she does with Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine, and it apparently she had the line in it in the first verse. She says, "I want to rage against the fucking machine," and that was in there before they brought Tom in.
That's nice.
Which is like that was the song that like you could tie into this one, and the whole thing uses like rage style like weird guitar sounds and everything. But the muck is the one that gets stuck in my head at night. Stuck in the muck and it just loops in my brain, and that song is a banger. Weirdo is an anthem, but the muck, that's my pick for best track on the album. Anyway.
Awesome.
All right. So someone just added book rec. I'm glad my mom died. What is that?
It's okay.
Oh, I saw that.
While you were talking about your like experiences and needing to hear that you'd experienced abuse. And I'd actually meant to put this on the list anyway. So I just finished reading a book called I'm Glad My Mom Died. And it's by Jeanette McCurdy, who was a Nickelodeon actress in like the late aughts. And she was on a show called iCarly. And then she was on a show with future pop star Ariana Grande called Sam and Cat, which was like a spinoff of two shows. Not great. Like these are like, kid sitcoms, right? And she quit acting, and although she says she might go back to it, but she quit acting and was doing this one woman show a couple years ago called I'm Glad My Mom Died, which great title, really fucking like that's going to get attention. But she wrote the book, and it's a memoir. And look, I'm a little bit too old for the shows that she was on. I'm like aware of them, but I'm too old to really know much about that. So I went into this reading it, and then I actually got the Audible version, like listening to it, not with a ton of familiarity, the way that some people would buy a celebrity memoir where they're like, oh, I remember, this child actress from my childhood. Like I don't really have that relationship, and neither of you would have that relationship. So I think that this would be a good rec. And I still thought it was a really, really good memoir. She basically talks about like her relationship with her mom, who died of cancer when she was like 21. And how her mom had been the one who had pushed her into acting to begin with, which she'd never really wanted to do when she was 6 years old, and really was living vicariously through her. Her mom basically like started her on, having an eating disorder and encouraging that sort of thing. She thinks is maybe a way of control and some other stuff, and just some other really fucked up things that while she was growing up, like she would have said, like, my mom's the best. She's the most important person in my life. But then as she became like an adult and had to deal with things, she had to kind of like face the reality that she did kind of grow up in more of an abusive environment and in a really fucked up a lot of scenarios. But it's a really, really good memoir. Like I was shocked because usually these types of memoirs are like the Jamie Lynn Spears variety, which I did not buy, but I did pirate and was hot garbage. And I don't say that because like I'm like more team Britney than team other ones. Like I'm team that whole family is like white trash and sucks. But like this was actually really, really good. And I'm gonna wreck it for people to read or listen to, even if you have no idea who she is. It was a really good memoir of, somebody who's kind of gone through a lot of stuff, kind of the weird fame cycle, but also like grappling with their mental health and coming to terms with a childhood that was not what they thought that it was.
I don't know exactly where this thing goes, but I do often think about how it's not it's not one of the experiences that is socially appropriate to discuss, which is a relief when a parent dies, a parent that's been complex, impact on your life as a child. And that it doesn't mean that you wished them dead, but that maybe, there's some relief from them passing.
Yeah. No, she talked about that in some of her interviews, because obviously she's been like, she's done, the press junket around this. Now that it's like top of the bestseller list, that's probably only going to continue. But people have asked, they're like, okay, so what about the title? Like, and she's like, look, it's, I really mean it. Like, yes, it's provocative and it's going to get people to pay attention, which is true. She's like, but it's also accurate. And I think that I've earned the title. Like I heard her say in one interview that, and I was like, that's really, I like that. I like her saying, I feel like my lived experience, I've earned the title. But she also, George Stephanopoulos asked her on Good Morning America, he was like, well, what would your mom think of the title? Would you name it that? And she was like, there wouldn't be a book if my mom was alive. I wouldn't have written the book. I wouldn't have been able to do that. And I think it might have been in the intro, but no, it wasn't in that. I think it might have been something with the Atlantic or something, but she like talked about like, or maybe she did, maybe it was something I just read anecdotally in the Atlantic, that when people are giving like tips on memoir stuff, this is what it was. It was an anecdote in the Atlantic where the writer was saying that she was in a memoir class in college, and the professor would hear people and say, you might have to wait until people are dead to write that, because that is a very valid thing. I think there are a lot of people who can't express their truth and how things really are or really were until people have passed, which I think all of us can relate and experience that and know that, there are things that we can talk about, even if we talk about it on a podcast like this, that we know our parents don't listen to. There are things you can't put out there in the public until people are gone to really get into. So in this case, she had to wait, like her mom's been dead for probably a decade, but she had to wait. Like she wouldn't have been able to write the book and name it that. But it's also, it's a provocative thing that will get attention, but she does actually sincerely mean it, like not that she hates her mother. She has complicated feelings about it. But to your point, Jeff, like she feels that relief that a lot of people have and don't feel emboldened or open to say. And there was a lot of discourse when the book came out or leading up to its release, where people were like very upset by the title. And then there was pushback from others who were saying exactly what you said, which is, no, we need to acknowledge that these are things people feel and that it's okay for them to feel that. And I think if you read the book, you definitely understand. At least I got the impression, and I would love, if you two read it, or I'll slide you a copy or whatever.
Book
any
club.
of our listeners, or book club. I feel like she earned the title. I thought it was. I'll also just, and then I'll shut up, but I thought it was really well written. She says that like that's what she really wants to do. She wants to be a writer or a director. She's a very, very good writer. And I think that's what makes this work, even if you have no context for who she is as a person or as a celebrity. It's one of those rare memoirs that I've read where I went, okay, this was in some cases like hard to read because it's, there's a lot in here, but it was actually very, very well written.
Awesome.
I think I'm going to write a book called I'm Sorry I Died, and then have it published posthumously. And,
I love that.
It will not be an airing of grievances.
Right.
It will just be like, I'm just going to be honest about how I felt about everyone and everything, which by and large is really good. And maybe I don't say enough nice things to people, but given I'm not famous enough for there to be like any real estate value to a memoir of my life, I feel like a posthumous, like just have it self-published when I die. Like if I don't check in every 30 days and tell it not to publish, it'll eventually just auto-publish a month after my passing.
I'm kind of into that.
Get to work.
All right. So should we skip to gratitude?
I think we could just go to gratitude.
Yeah.
Let's do it. So I'll go first. Can I go first?
You can absolutely go first.
I'm picking Launch Bar this week, but with the caveat that I don't give a shit what you use. Like if you're an Alfred person, if you're a Quicksilver person, if you just like to launch things to the spotlight, Yeah, Raycast for sure. Like anything, any kind of launcher fits the bill. I've been a LaunchBar user since it came out, which was in the later days of Quicksilver. I switched from Quicksilver, like before round 2 of Quicksilver.
Right.
Quicksilver has made a resurgence, but before round 2, I became back in like 2000. It's been like 2006, 2007. I switched to LaunchBar. And I just became a dedicated user. Quicksilver kind of fell by the wayside. LaunchBar ruled the arena. I became a hardcore fan. And then Alfred came out, and like everything about Alfred impressed me. I think it's a great app. I have no qualm. I have no beef with Alfred. LaunchBar was already doing everything I needed it to do. So I'm a huge LaunchBar fan, but my pick can also incorporate Alfred, Raycast, Quicksilver, whatever you want, whatever you like. They're all amazing. Launchers in general.
Yep. I went Alfred from Quicksilver and you went LaunchBar. It's like, it's not even a type of person. It's just like, we all sorted where we sorted.
Exactly.
It's like a pachinko. It was like a pachinko machine. It's
just where you landed.
Down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've done like all of them. So I went to LaunchBar first, and I was LaunchBar, and I still actually have, like, I still buy LaunchBar whenever like it's updated. I always buy it. But I have like a lifetime Alfred thing. That's primarily what I use. I recently started using Raycast a little bit, and I like it. There's some parts of it that I don't love. So it's funny because often how I do it, like, because I have 3 different Macs, my work laptop, my personal laptop, and my iMac. And so I typically have, like a couple of them aliased. So I have, multiples that I could kind of switch between. So not like 3 at one time, but usually like 2 at one time to kind of figure out. And my only thing I think with sticking with Alfred historically has been that it had like a little bit more active, like third-party community for extensions and things like that. I mean, obviously you can still do those things in LaunchBar, but Alfred for a while really kind of had the mind share. And now a lot of that seems to have gone to Raycast, but you use what you use. But I'm with you. I love all of them. And for anybody out there who's a Windows user, PowerToys, which is a free and open source thing that the Windows team actually builds on GitHub, spiritual successor to the old PowerToys that came with like Windows 95 and shit, has a launcher which is mapped to the Windows space
Nice.
like thing that works, that also has plugins that people can do and whatnot. So and I was sort of responsible for that a little bit because I showed the guy who's the lead of that project an open source window launcher on Windows that I had been using that I really liked. And when they started building Power Toys, that was something that they wound up forking because that project wasn't actively being developed and used, when they were building out the launcher and Power Toys. So yeah, +1, love launchers.
Nice
also,
work.
That is the 4th or 5th Windows 95 shout out on this show since I joined.
I love Windows 95. What can I say?
And also, have you noticed that the Windows 95 launch footage has been kind of moving around Twitter again, where they're all dancing?
Yeah.
It's like which ones had cocaine?
All of them. All of them.
Yeah, but especially the big guy in the middle.
Oh, of course, Ballmer. Come on, man. He's the one he's the one we most want to get high with.
He's like Craig Finn from The Hold Steady. His arms are flying. And anyway, sorry, but Windows 95, go get them.
Quick sub pick. I just got to throw in here. Astral app. Have you guys seen astralapp.com?
I have.
It's a way to tag, add notes, and organize your GitHub stars. Like,
yes,
we all star
yes.
repos. We're like, yep, let's star this repo and we'll remember it later. But you get, like Christina, you have hundreds of stars.
Yeah, I have this problem.
And to keep track of them all, Astral app is like it's like Pinboard for GitHub stars.
Yep. Huge.
Awesome.
Huge
I'm just going to leave that in the show notes.
Yeah, leave that in the show notes. Yeah, that's a huge one. There's also a Chrome extension or Edge or Firefox, whatever, an extension for everything but Safari, because Safari is Safari. That is called like Little Star, that will also make it a little bit easier for you to organize your stars. But Astral is great. You can also self-host Astral. Like they've got their hosted thing, but that sometimes has issues, but you can host it yourself. I think there's even a Docker container. So,
oh my God, Astral's amazing. I literally just logged in.
Yeah, no,
there I am.
Yeah, it's really good. I'm a very big fan.
Wow. Needed.
All right,
Brett.
Christina, you got something for us?
Okay, yeah. So I talked about Canva before?
Oh man,
the design.
You're asking two ADHD people.
Yeah, the design
app.
app.
Something.
The design
no,
app.
I don't think you have.
Okay,
not since I've been on.
Okay, so I haven't talked about it. Okay, so Canva. It's canva.com. It is a website, web app. There is a Mac app, but I think it's basically just an Electron wrapper, which is fine. It's a subscription. I don't know how much it costs because I'm on part of somebody's team plan, but it's actually very reasonable. And if you do a lot of design stuff, like if you're having to create YouTube thumbnails, for instance, or social media banners or other things, or even just other kind of Photoshop-like stuff, it is amazing. And it is a really, really good tool. It's really easy to use, but it's also really powerful. And the thing that I really like about it is that I've used, so for instance, I have to make like thumbnails for my YouTube videos every week, and I'm in front of a green screen, and you would think that removing the green screen from your background would be a fairly easy task. I have Photoshop, I have Affinity Photo, I have, all these, Pixelmator, I have all these things that I pay for, latest version of Creative Cloud, all this stuff. None of them do it as well as the built-in, as like the free thing for Canva, where it'll remove your background for you, whether it's a green screen or something else. It's actually incredibly, incredibly good. But they have a lot of these templates. Some of them are premium, so you have to be part of, you have to be part of their subscription to do it. That are submitted by others. But it's a really great, just like kind of design app for dummies. And honestly, like I look at it and I'm like, this is eating Adobe's lunch in a lot of regards in terms of like things like Photoshop Express and stuff like that. I'm a really, really big fan. So Canva is my pick because I'm going to have to use it in a few minutes. I've been very happy with the results I've been getting from it, but it's also easy to use. It's a lot more advanced than you would think with these sorts of design tools. It's not going to be good. Like obviously if you are a professional designer, you're not going to love everything about this, but if you need to do something quick and dirty, or even if you just need to like make something like an infographic or, a graph or like some or other sort of thing, for work or for something, it's really, really good. I'm a really, really big fan.
I am awesome. I am very comfortable in design applications, especially Affinity stuff these days, but I grew up on Adobe, and I would probably immediately run into the limitations of this.
Yeah.
But there's so much shit I do that I just need a quick and dirty, I need a good looking cover photo for a blog post or a podcast episode. And it could be perfect for that.
That's what this is perfect for.
Elle works for a yarn shop, and she handles their social media, and she has dug in and learned a good amount of like Affinity Photo in order to be able to create good looking promos for them. This could actually, like, I would split the cost of a yearly pro account is $120. That's not bad.
No, and I think it's $150 for a Teams thing for the first 5 people. So if each of you want, you could split an account, or you could like if you wanted to share something, like so I'm on somebody's Teams account. It's really good. I think for both of you it'd be good. Like I'm fairly comfortable with design tools, not as comfortable as you are, but I've used all of these things forever. But when I was going to like make a YouTube thumbnail, okay, so I have to remove the background, and that's more challenging than it should be, because for whatever reason, the AI on Canva is better. It's better than Photoshop's. It is. That's a flat out fact. And then, I need to add in like the various elements, and I need to do, apply certain things, to get the coloring right, or the gradient, or this or that, and like the font. And like, it takes all this time versus browsing through, finding a template that I can customize to my liking, and then just snapping it out. And I'm not going to lie. Like I'm lazy, and it looks good, and I'm happy with it. You know what I mean?
Nice. Mm-hmm. Yep. I'm into it.
Yeah. Awesome. First of all, I've been playing with Astral here, And you know what I wish I could do? I wish I could tag it with a certain tag that would cause it to be sent to Pinboard. That would be like an amazing
really
thing.
Cool.
But it's so good.
Maybe we could write an integration. There might be a way to do an integration.
It is so good. And its viewer, when I click on the various things that are starred, is just really well done. And man, thank you. This is awesome. Okay. My pick is simple. It's a very old pick. It's Byword.
Yes.
I don't know if you ever used Write Room back in the day.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
From Jesse, how do you say his last name? Grosjean.
Yeah.
Who of course did Bike, which has been, I think was a unanimous recommendation on this podcast. Oh my God, how am I not thinking of the thing that I use all the time? Task Paper.
Yeah.
Duh. Anyway, so awesome. Write Room is great. I remember I used it. Man, I lived in New York when I used Write Room, which was like 2004. I think, and you could just you will both know this, but you just, open this app and it's just a big black screen with green type. I mean, you could add a couple of themes. That was the one that came up, and it was just so lovely of an environment to write in. And so anyway, Byword, when Write Room, you can still, I think, technically run, but Byword became my replacement for Write Room a long time ago. I mean, like a decade or more ago. And I've kind of just let it go by the wayside. And then recently I had this just like desperate need to write and focus, and I just popped it in, made it full screen, and was just able to write. And ever since then I've been keeping it up as my sort of note-taking app, because it's just such a lovely environment to write in. So Byword still going strong. I actually don't know the last time it was updated, but still going.
What I love about Byword is keyboard shortcuts. Byword followed the TextMate mentality of we're just going to give you a blank screen with no buttons, but we're going to give you keyboard shortcuts. It was the first time I had the Command Option up arrow to gradually increase the selection. If your cursor's on the page and you hit Command Option up arrow, it'll select the current word. Hit it again, it'll select the current sentence. Hit it again, it will select within parentheticals or the current paragraph. Hit it again, and it'll select the whole document. And that kind of control command up and down, I think was the first time I saw that for moving lines up and down without having to select stuff like that. And that became part of my my minimum viable product requirements for a Markdown editor was that it had that kind of power without having buttons for it. That kind of under the surface, it can do exactly what you need it to do in any given time without looking like Microsoft Word.
Yeah. For me, my number one thing with a Markdown editor, and it's still hard for me to find it, to be completely honest, is when I select text and I hit a bracket, I don't want it to delete the text. I want it to surround the text in brackets.
Yes, absolutely. That is, and I'm pretty sure Byword does that.
I'm pretty sure it does.
If you've played with NV Ultra at all, or even Multi-Markdown Composer, really good with auto pairing of brackets, parentheses, backticks for code spans. Once you get used to writing and then selecting and hitting the surrounding bracket, it's hard to go back.
It is. It is. I found a workaround for VS Code that now doesn't quite work, and I have to figure out another workaround again. But it's frustrating, right? So TextMate was so good for so long, and I stuck to it for years. Partially, honestly, because of that sort of thing. Because I was it does the shit that I need it to do. And I got so used to being able to select text and hit, the modifier and not have it delete it, that I was this ruins it.
It's the first thing I test when I open up a new Markdown editor to see if it's something I care about. Is I'll select text and hit a double quote. And if it surrounds it in double quotes, we can keep moving. If not, I'm done. I'm out. That's just basic care it's basic user care right there.
Yeah,
totally.
No, but yet I also understand the challenge, because if you're building a multi-purpose text editor, that isn't going to be, the response that the most people want. But if you're writing in Markdown, you definitely do. And it's funny. I think that I probably do that as a test as well, Brett, probably because you do, because we probably talked about it at some point in the last 15 years. And I was it makes sense.
I'll see if I can find. I wrote an article at some point. My ideal Markdown editor, and I laid out a list of requirements that, my ultimate Markdown editor wish list. I wrote it back in 2012, and people still contact me because they were, they started working on a new editor and they took these requirements into account. And I stand by everything in this article, which includes auto pairing and wrapping. And if you start a list item, with a bullet and you hit return, it should start another list item. And if you hit return again on an empty line, it should clear the list out. Like basic stuff like that. Just that's how a Markdown editor needs to work for me. So
agreed.
I will link that. If anyone wants to build their own Markdown editor, see my article as like, if you want to build a Markdown editor that impresses me, here's your MVP.
But also, as somebody who's been working off and on a Markdown editor, you can probably tell people like just not to do it, right? Like, isn't that just a world of pain?
Well, okay. So, did you ever see what was it called? Shit, I had a Markdown editor I wrote for WordPress that worked inside of the built-in WordPress editor.
Oh yeah, I remember
It
this.
was quick tags.
Yeah, quick tags.
Markdown quick tag.
Yep.
MDQT. Yeah, and I wrote it all in JavaScript, and it basically was this layer that sat above the tiny MCE editor in WordPress, and I incorporated all of this into the WordPress editor, and I had a blast doing it. I think the thing that scares me working on an app like NV Ultra with Fletcher is the file handling. Like you corrupt a file and you've ruined somebody's note. You've deleted somebody's data.
Right.
That's the nerve-wracking part. Dealing with like, this is what should happen when you hit this key. That stuff's easy and pretty fun. And I did a lot of that with NV Alt too. That have fun with that. If you get into actually being a file manager like NV Ultra is, then you're treading on like, holy shit, I can't fuck this up territory.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, have fun. Make new Markdown.
I mean, I definitely want that. It's so funny. One of my former colleagues at Microsoft was like negging me today, and they're like, "When is GitHub going to make their own Markdown editor?" I was like, "That would be awesome," but I don't know. I don't think that that's on anybody's roadmap, but that would be cool.
All right, that was fun, you guys.
It was fun.
What did we talk about today?
Oh, don't do that shit.
It's been a while.
We talked about styles of conversation and ways of listening /
presence,
failing to listen, quality of presence,
and quality of presence. Thank you, Jeff.
We talked about whether neurotypical people even exist.
Yeah.
We did not come to a conclusion.
We did not.
I said I don't believe in that monster, but I was searching for words, and monster wasn't the one I meant. So if anybody out there identifies that way, I didn't mean monster. I still don't know what I meant, but I'm not that mean.
And we talked about apps.
Yeah, we went long on mental health, and I feel like we had a lot to say. Brett found a therapist.
Yes,
we had a lot to talk about. But then we got into gratitude. And I think all three picks today were thought-provoking and really exciting.
Yes.
I won't ruin them for people listening to just this summary. I won't ruin the picks.
They're good ones.
You'll have to check it out.
You're going to have to check it out.
We actually, I think I picked Word. If I'm not mistaken, Christina, you were Excel. And Brett, you were Access, right?
No, I went with Pages just to be the rebel.
Oh,
got it.
Right. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, great conversation.
Hey, you guys, get some sleep.
Get some sleep.
Check out our YouTube channel, follow our Twitter and Instagram accounts, and sign up for the newsletter. See the show notes for links.
The system is going down now.